Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Hennings, and I'm going to be talking about my first case study about one of the clients I have worked with before at my clinic. And so let's get started. So the client currently right now is 6 years old. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. Through his screening and intake, the major behaviors that were addressed were his tantrum behaviors, which was a combination of body flopping, crying, and yelling, physical aggression towards other individuals. There were no self-injurious behaviors that he exhibited, but those physical aggressive behaviors include hitting, kicking, and punching, and as well as swearing. A functional analysis was conducted for the client to see what sort of triggers he was having for these behaviors. A questionnaire and parent interview was also conducted to gauge the child's interests and to see what he wanted to help with the intervention process. And the client, who we will call Jason for today, received therapy full time from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. So the problem behavior frequency, the occurrences, most of the problem behaviors that occurred, as I mentioned before, were due to denied access of preferred items, escape from non-preferred activities / work. So there, for examples, we had cleaning up toys, transitioning to other social activities such as peer play with another friend, or sharing, and waiting for the technician as well. Those were the main ones that exhibited these tantrum behaviors and aggressive behaviors. And specifically for his swearing, we noticed it was attention seeking, and he would normally make eye contact with us. So these were some of the intervention ideas and developments that we were used, which I will talk about right now. So the reinforcement contingencies or interventions that were implemented, we used an extinction contingency for his swearing since it was attention seeking. We used planned ignoring since it was socially mediated attention. Once we put that implemented, I will share the results obviously later in the presentation, but also other interventions involved we used different interventions for each targeted problem behavior. So for his tantrum behavior, it was a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, or DRA. We utilized functional communication training since the client initially was not very verbal. So we utilized PECS, which I will bring up specifically in the next slide. And once he became more verbal, we used 1 to 2 word manding or requesting, and we worked our way up from that. We also used positive reinforcement contingencies to increase appropriate behavior, obviously. So we did compliance training for denied access. We put a visual saying not available, so that would help the client realize he could not currently play with that toy or have that snack at that time, and helping him understand with those visuals that this is what is available and what is not available. And that ended up decreasing his tantrum behaviors, which, as I mentioned before, I will discuss in these next slides. And we also used an A/B design, which is a baseline and intervention design, which I will also discuss in these next few slides. So the motivating operations that we utilized, there was unconditioned MOs. So Jason was very motivated by physical play or gross motor activities, such as going on the swing. He enjoyed getting piggyback rides. He enjoyed playing tag, running with his friends. Those were the most important. Those were the biggest unconditioned motivating operations that we utilized for our advantage to these interventions. There were also, we used a CMO, or condition motivating operations, to help increase his vocabulary. Like I said before, for that functional communication training, we utilize this for natural learning opportunities. So therefore, like the one I have on here, if he had his lunchbox, he would bring it into the lunchroom, and he was unable to unzip the lunchbox himself. So we first used PECs that had open or help on it to help him understand that we would unzip his lunchbox for him, or other things such as opening the closet door. We would have him point for open as well, and just so he would help him learn quicker those functional needs that he needed. The reinforcement schedule initially started as a 1-to-1 or continuous reinforcement, which is also a fixed ratio 1-to-1. This ended up slowly progressing into the more time he was at therapy and understanding the concepts. We turned into a variable ratio 3-to-1 in natural learning. And then once the work related, where we took him to the table, was not as big, we did discrete trial training, and he's now at a variable ratio of 5-to-1. So his compliance has really come a long way since then. So good for Jason. Generalization, I'm just going to talk about one specific behavior that we were doing. But this is pretty much the strategy we used. So we would use pretty much stimulus fading. So we would start off simple with example, like we're teaching his colors. We start with receptive identification with discrete trial training. Then for maximizing the potential of labeling / tacting the colors, we moved it much easier to a reinforcing item or a food, such as showing him colored M&Ms to help him learn his colors, because he really liked M&Ms, which who doesn't? Once he was able to master out of those colors for the program, we used just pictures, just generic pictured cards of colors, and we would hold them up, and then he would also bring those to make sure he would also master those, just to make sure he knew his colors. And the final step, we turned into a game where we had colors around the clinic, and we would for example, we said, Jason, go find the green ball, and he would just go, and then if he gave it to us, it's clear that he generalized and he knows his colors. So that's the final step and the final process of his generalization for his targeted behaviors. He did a very good job. We usually, for maintenance, so that was one way for generalization. Maintenance targets, we usually ran maintenance at least once a week, usually near the end of the week, just to make sure the client didn't lose those targeted master skills that we taught him before. But we would fade out the reinforcement, obviously, so we'd weaken the reinforcement. But also though too, we made sure that stayed consistent, so that he would not lose those skills that were taught from him before. So as I mentioned before, it was a baseline intervention design, which is AB. So the baseline was collected over a week period for each of the problem behaviors, as I mentioned earlier before. Functional communication, we began with PECs, as I mentioned earlier too, where we started from stage 1, and he was able to get all the way up to stage 4 within 2 months of therapy. And then slowly but surely we'd have vocal imitations to help him with his speech. And a couple months later, he actually started talking. Excuse me. Initially, though, for the first couple weeks, the intervention was not as effective as we could tell from the graphing, since the problem behaviors were still occurring at a high frequency and a very long duration rate. So therefore, we modified the intervention plan to focus specifically on compliance training, because we felt that there was a barrier being exhibited, or a lack of immediate consequence for positive reinforcement. So therefore, we just don't believe that Jason was understanding what we were asking him to do. So therefore, the programs are modified, as I mentioned, to general compliance training. And once Jason was able to figure out and understand instructional control, that's when the intervention really started taking off. And you could tell, as we were graphing it, it was just major progressions. Finally, the effectiveness of the intervention. As I mentioned before, he would have hours of tantrum behaviors a day, and throughout the next couple of weeks, it went from 2 hours a day down to 10 minutes a day, which you would still think 10 minutes is quite a bit, but considering the marked improvement that he made from just the few weeks span of time, we could tell that the interventions were being accurately and validly implemented correctly from our technicians, as well as myself. Aggression dropped from 5 hits and kicks a day down to 2. So there was effectiveness in that in those interventions as well. And the planned ignoring from before through the socially mediated attention seeking for Jason decreased from 4 times a day of swearing to once a day. So just proving itself that the interventions were effective and we got the results we were looking for within a couple months span of time. And that is it. Here are my references that I used. So thank you guys for listening. And I will talk to you guys later.